All right, guys, we are back. This is episode, I believe, 18. I never seem to get these right on numbers, but I think we're 18. And this time we're talking about primarily Whopper Plopper or Whopper Plopper style baits. This bait took the bass fishing world by storm when it first came out. Its popularity has maybe flattened off a little bit as people and fish have figured them out, but still very, very lethal, very good for big bites. And I'm going to flip it over to these two, my wonderful co-hosts, JJ Patton and Chuck Pfizer. And again, this episode is brought to you by K&K True Value in Bettendorf, Iowa. And again, we're talking Whopper Ploppers, Chapo, whatever Guggen calls theirs, the plop style hard baits. So I'll let these guys take it away.
Yeah, it's kind of the Whopper Plopper gets the Kleenex award.
Yep.
If you use a facial tissue, it's a Kleenex. If you use a bait like this, and basically what happens is you're pulling on this end, and the back half of the bait is rotating around itself and buzzing. It's almost like a buzz bait action.
Like a buzz bait and a spook got together.
Yeah, but you have two large treble hooks. It's kind of an interesting story. They used to use these for muskie a lot. In fact, I was telling these guys I was up north back in college, so a long time ago. We used to throw what was called a tallywhacker, and it was the same thing. And this thing would go around and it would plop, 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 and you'd throw it at night, or you'd throw it for muskie. But we used to go night fishing, and we would throw this around and catch big smallmouth on it. Of course, I wasn't smart enough to capitalize on that and develop one in a bass line. But fortunately, River to Sea was, and when it first came out, it was pretty hush hush. In fact, if you listen to some interviews, there was some photo shoots or press observers that were in boats with guys that would tell them, don't tell anybody about this bait until about 2015, I'm going to guess it was. James Watson was using this in the fall down at Table Rock and won a AAA event. It was an Open or a Everstart or whatever they were at the time,
right,
using it, and it blew up big time. So in about 2015 to 2018, this thing was, everybody had to have one. River to Sea was in the market, or they were the developers of it, and they had basically this one's a 130 size, and that's millimeters, so it's 130 millimeters, 13 centimeters, so just over 4 inches. They developed a couple other ones, the 110, the 90, and the 75, and then now you've got some other companies that are kind of knocking it off or making equivalent baits.
right.
I think the first time I saw one of these on video was Chris Lane or one of the Lane brothers.
Chris Lane
Was battling Kevin Van Dam, and he was using a bone.
Yeah,
130.
I was like a teenager, and I had to go buy one of these, and this might even be the first one I bought, was one of these big giant bone ones.
I think that was Toledo Bend.
Yep, it was Toledo Bend. I don't know what year it was, but the video of that was just awesome.
Yeah, he was catching them good there. But as JJ said, there are some other companies that are making them too. And actually, the technology's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
It's just gotten popular over the last 6-7 years probably.
Moved to the bass market.
The bass market has really taken it by storm. But Berkeley came out with one called the Chapo, in the 120 size, and I actually prefer it a little bit better. It's got the plopper is actually hard. It's not a soft rubber. And actually, if you have some of the old Whopper ploppers, I believe they originally came out where they were hard, and they're sought after. But the Chapo by Berkeley actually is hard, and it makes a little bit different noise than the River to Sea. And I actually prefer the Chapo.
They're
catch
loud.
more fish. They are very loud. And it comes in 3 different sizes as well. This is the biggest size I believe it comes in, but you hang on when you get bit for sure. I use a pretty stiff rod with it. I don't use a normal crankbait rod just because it has treble hooks. I throw it on a 704 Dobbins or 734 Dobbins.
And you're
casting rod.
These hooks on here are meat hooks, so
you got to drive it home.
You need a rod with some backbone to drive that thing through the mouth.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
the
you-
734 is a really good rod for
You
it.
guys briefly hit on rods and line. One thing I want to mention is how to fish this thing.
Yeah.
It seems like on whatever brand you're using, and Whopper Plopper got its name because of the plop plop sound.
Right.
There's a magical speed to fishing each one of these sizes and brands where they'll make a bubbling or plopping type sound, to where that sound is what you're looking for. Usually,
Yeah.
Right.
that's the sound you're looking for with one of these. So if you're going too fast, you won't hear it. If you're going too slow, you won't hear it. But right in that sweet spot is when they start making that.
And it actually does. You actually can. I'm not real musical, but you can hear that. That you can hear when it sounds right. And of course, if you're fishing it, mostly it's on a straight retrieve. So when you're doing it, just pay attention to the noise it's making. Try burning it. Try going slower, and you'll get to that where it plops. And it's hard to describe for a non-musical guy, but there is definitely a sweet spot on each one of them, each size. That
I'm actually a little different than these guys because I don't always just cast and retrieve. I actually use it as a rip bait as well,
yeah,
and just I'll reel it up and then rip it and it'll stop, rip it, stop, rip it, stop. Then when you stop once in a while, it'll just explode on it. But you know, you can try all the different retrieves and let the fish tell you what they're looking for. But I think most of the time it's just a cast and retrieve bait.
For a lot of guys.
Yeah.
One thing to mention too that's nice about this is they're really buoyant. Like with a buzzbait, you got to get that thing turning immediately, or else
Yeah,
you're
keep it up.
sinking. This thing, you can cast it and let it sit. It's not going anywhere. It's not going to float. I mean, it's not going to sink. Nice to throw around cover. Keep it in a strike zone a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Doing the rip or doing a small twitch of it. It is a pretty versatile topwater, which is probably why it got such attention when it first came out. But
Yeah.
yeah.
You can actually reel these really fast. I've seen on clear water, real clear water, where they're reeling them.
the Chapo.
Yeah, both of them. They're reeling them fast. Just the fish doesn't get a chance to look at them, and they just attack them. So you just got to basically, try several different retrieves until you feel like that's what the fish wants.
It
But
looks
it's very versatile, really.
It seems to me that it imitates a baby duck. Because if you ever watch a baby duck run away from a boat, it's like on the top. That's exactly what this looks like. And I don't know if that's why the fish eat it, but it probably imitates a shad too, or a bluegill.
Yeah.
Obviously there's two big trebles, so throwing this in heavy weeds is somewhat difficult, or around wood is somewhat difficult. They're great on riprap banks. If you got a weed line and you can fish the outside edge of the weed line, it'll call them up out of some significant depth.
Good drawing power on these.
Yeah.
Yeah. They make a lot of noise.
Another thing to hit on is the sizes. We briefly mentioned it, but this size is the bigger bass one. It's the 130, and another popular bass size I know Chuck said he liked is the 90. And then recently, it's probably 2-3 years old, they came out with like a fat 75 that I like. Chuck was disagreeing, but I like the little fat 75. I think it fishes more similar to the 130. I just hooked my sweatshirt, so this is going to become a nice jewelry piece for the rest of the episode. The other thing to mention is they make silent versions, which you would think kind of defeats the purpose of the plopper, but for whatever reason, I don't find myself using the silent one very often, but they do make one where the plop won't make any noise. I don't know if you guys have bought any of those or not, but
No.
they make a silent version that's very odd. It's just prop style, no plop. So
And the other thing to mention, the 90 has a very small plopper.
Very subtle.
And I don't know, it's probably better in clean water and more calm conditions. It's a subtle topwater bait. The 75, when they came out, they put the bigger size on there. And so that's a smaller bait, but makes more noise than the 90.
which is why I was drawn to
Yeah.
it.
The 90 is a pretty good bait fish size. It's 3 inches long. It's a size of a lot of the eater shad that they're feeding on. But it is definitely a more finesse plopper, if there is such a thing. I don't know if that's a thing. But
Yeah, and the colors are pretty simple on this. I mean, bone is probably a bone or a whitish color is probably the most popular.
Yeah.
They do have bluegill imitations. They got other shad. maybe a little bit more transparent, for your real clear waters. A lot of guys like black. People use black a lot.
If you're gonna make an investment in the Whopper, Plopper, and prop style bait, don't get caught up so much in colors. I would recommend trying different sizes.
Yeah.
Just get a dark, a light, and then try some different sizes and find which ones you like.
I keep it simple. I use a 90 or I use the 120 or 130. I don't use much in between. I feel like if I'm really finessing them, I'll use the 90. And if I want to try to aggravate them and try to catch the bigger ones, I'll use the bigger one. But you can try all of them. They all have their time and place.
I probably use the 110 more than anything, and that's probably because it's a compromise. It's not quite as big of a hunk of plastic as this, but it still makes quite a bit of noise.
Yeah. You use what rod do you use? Using a 734?
734.
Yeah.
Sometimes a 735 if I'm throwing the big one. I'm not afraid to throw that on a heavier rod. Usually braid.
Yeah.
You don't have to fish braid if you're fishing on a steady retrieve because your line isn't really in the water, so it's not sinking it. So if you wanted to use fluorocarbon, I don't see that there'd be a problem, but I don't know why you would.
I wouldn't go for
Yeah,
it.
use 50-pound braid.
Yeah.
Those hooks are big. You got to really drive them in.
Yeah, I think a heavy rod is important with these, and fish attack these. When they bite them, they get them. It's a good smallmouth bait if you're fishing sand drops on the river or riprap banks on the river. They'll come up and eat this thing.
Pike like them too.
Pike like them too,
lot.
yes.
Yeah.
Which is why you should use braid.
A lot.
Yeah, and Matt carries an array of both of these.
Yeah.
And then all the different colors he has too, both the Berkeley and the River to Sea.
This
Whopper
might be
Plopper.
one of the few baits that there's really no modifying needed.
No, the
I don't
hooks
even
are good
know
on them.
What modification you'd make?
Yeah, I don't think
No.
I've made any on them.
And I tie direct. Usually, I notice you got a split ring. I don't know if you need it. Probably doesn't hurt. But
It's odd. The bigger ones come with
They
split
come with
rings,
it.
but
Do
the
they?
small
Oh, do they?
ones don't.
Yeah, some of them don't.
Well,
Like
maybe I
the
do try.
Berkeley doesn't come with it either.
see,
And I would directly tie right to it too.
I don't
It
think
just,
the 110 has a split ring.
No, the 75 and the 90.
I think just the
don't.
130 and the other one comes with the split ring.
And that other one's a 190, so that's 19 centimeters. So you're looking at
It's about one of those.
6 inches. Yeah, it's a big piece of. But like I said, the muskie guys use them, and if you talk to muskie guys up north, they catch a lot of smallmouth bass by accident, and largemouth. But they're not afraid to eat something this big. I mean, you look at swim baits that we throw that are 10, 12 inches long. It's still smaller than that. So
I catch plenty of small fish on the 130.
yeah.
Yeah,
I have to imagine the 190 would do the same, but.
yeah, the fish aren't afraid of them. They'll eat them.
All right, guys, this was a shorter episode, but still hopefully valuable to you. We wanted to make sure we covered these, hard prop style baits, and we'll definitely catch you next Friday, where we're going to be talking about another hard topwaters, spooks and poppars, hard
Good.
topwaters. So, catch you next Friday. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.